What's going on, everybody? It's Brian and Ben here with 4FTV, where we talk about everything from faith, family, fitness, and freedom. And today we are coming at you in episode 11 with the two silent killers that are the root cause behind most diseases that you may actually be unaware of. Ben and I made a promise. We were going to make this one short for you guys, very digestible. There's a ton of science and literature behind this. So what we're going to do is in the notes below, or excuse me, in the comment section below, I'm going to link the Google Doc where we put down a ton of information. There's also going to be links to the article that we're pulling from that was a massive study, but we are going to try to simplify this entire study down to very digestible bites as to what these two silent killers are, how they're manifesting in your daily life, how they're showing up in your day-to-day life. And ultimately, we want to give you some form of a protocol or regimen to offset these two silent killers. So first and foremost, what are the two silent killers, Ben?
Well, I'm assuming that it's something related to stress, and I'm assuming that the other one is somewhat related to inflammation. And
Bing, bing, bing.
these are things that I find interesting as we talk through this. Just even looking through some of the portions of the study that we have, and without tipping the hand of cards too deeply, the acute, momentary, controlled aspects of stress. We have less and less of those today, or we're applying less and less of them today in the form of, good stressors like my 45 minutes of exercise today that I have to get in that does cause a stress, but brings all of these, these more than equal reciprocal benefits, right?
Yep.
So we have less and less of that. We have less regular activity than we ever had before that brings some kind of benefit. And we have more and more of these other types of chronic stressors that bring all these negative effects,
Absolutely.
And it's something we've done. All of our blessings have kind of turned into curses, and to an extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for most, we weren't even planning on talking about this, but a quick related note was I saw a post this week that showed like the last 100 years and like why obesity is going crazy and why all these illnesses and sicknesses. And it's literally been in the last 2 decades compared to the last 100 years, from the boom of technology, from the boom of smartphones, laptops, all these social media platforms. We have become so stagnant and so sedentary in our daily life compared to we used to not have washing machines. We used to not have cars. There were a lot of things we didn't have access to. People were outside more. Food quality was higher. There was less mass production. There was less all of these things, but they showed a 70% reduction in average basal metabolic rate in the last 20 years compared to the 100 years prior.
I saw that.
And to all of you who didn't see that on my story when I shared it, or you're like, what the heck's a basal metabolic rate or BMR? It basically means that's where my metabolism is at a given day, and that's how many calories I need to sustain my current state. So if your BMR is 2,000 calories, which honestly, I don't even think most of the population's there anymore, but if it's 2,000 calories, it means if you eat 2,000 calories a day, you'll stay the same. You'll stay pretty much exactly where you are. If you go below it, that's when you're in a deficit to lose some body fat. If you go above it, that's where you're ideally gaining muscle without too much body fat. But it used to be over 3,000 calories, like 70 to 100 years ago. People were so much more active on a daily basis. And again, Ben made a great point, because stress and inflammatory responses are good in the proper context. If you can't create stress in your body, if there's no stress response when you're working out, you can't tear down and build muscle. If there's no stress response to digesting whole foods, you're not actually incorporating the macro and micronutrients that you need to actually build and sustain your body. If there's no stress response in your body, it doesn't know how to heal itself when it's sick. It doesn't know how to, produce melatonin to get you sleepy at night. Like, stress and inflammation are very important factors. The problem is, ever since 2000 and beyond, with the technological boom, we are getting inundated with stress, and we have very few lifestyle choices that manage the type of stress that we are being delivered on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's incredible to think that we've in the period of, since you used 100 years as an example, in 100 years we have managed to eradicate a lot of diseases while we made a permanent home for others. And we've kind of just, gotten to the point where the diseases that we have now, we want to relabel, make them socially acceptable, kind of figure out, just being honest, figure out a way to kind of normalize them. And they're things that are just as dangerous. That's the other thing that we fool ourselves considering, is that we look back and say, man, we've come a long way since whatever. And in some ways we have, in a lot of other ways we have not.
Yeah. I mean, the fact it's kind of the irony of, we have so many medications today to help fight diseases that were hurting people in the past, but now a much bigger majority of people in the population are suffering from illnesses that take medications the rest of their life, or at least that's how it's being offered to them. That, hey, you got some issues, you're going to have to be on this medication the rest of your life. It's never addressed through exercise, nutrition, lifestyle change. It's just, here's your expensive medication. Insurance will cover most of it. Good luck.
Sure. Lifetime customer. Right.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I like having clients that like to work with me for long periods of time, but my goal is to never have them need me for the rest of their life.
Correct.
But yeah, so one thing we wanted to point out to you guys, again, we're going to try to keep this one short and digestible. But we need to bring it to your attention because, again, the mismanagement of stress and inflammation is causing 75 to 90% of the human diseases that we're seeing today, because they're all causing an activation in our stress system. And those common pathways and exposures can be, they can be cardiovascular related, which means your heart. It can be metabolic related, your metabolism. It can be psychotic and neurodegenerative, which is, issues of the brain. Inflammation in the brain is what causes a lot of imbalances around neuroticism and psychopathy, and like also things that can be just as massive, but I think get downplayed, around anxiety and depression. All of those are inflammatory responses inside of the brain for the most part. There are other factors, but they tend to originate from neurodegenerative issues. And I know some of this is going to sound like a lot. So if any of you all have questions while we're asking this, again, look down below in the description. You'll see a link to the Google Doc. You'll also see a link to the paper that we pulled this information from the meta study. But I will just warn you, like, our notes are also pieces from that study. The study's hard to read. So unless you got a good background, you might just want to rewatch this a few times or ask us questions in the comments, and we'll simplify it to, are you smarter than a third grader? Because if we can explain it to a third grader, we should be able to explain it to you. And ultimately that means we should understand it better. But basically, it doesn't matter if you're looking at heart disease, if you're looking at cancer, if you're looking at metabolic issues, psychological issues. These two stressors, your inability to manage stress and your inflammatory response that either precedes or proceeds stress, is basically the number one cause of all these diseases that are happening in our society today. And again, like, this is a stress response. There's a reason why people have like phantom phone and they feel vibrations in their legs.
Yeah.
That is a stress response. There's a reason that social media has gotten you to the point where, like, I feel like I have to be on it. I have to know what's going on. I have to get X amount of likes on my video or picture. And if I don't, I'm going to tear it down and I'm going to put a different filter or a different set of hashtags or whatever. I'm going to base my whole well-being and happiness on these external things. And when you don't get validated, it creates the stress, and that stress creates horrible inflammatory responses in the body. And again, we talked about it in previous episodes. One of your main hormones that is from stress is cortisol, and that happens in your adrenal glands, pituitary gland, your hypothalamus. That's known as the HPA axis. Like, though, that is where cortisol is a stress response. It's what wakes us up in the morning, but it's the mismanagement and the abuse of cortisol production because of all these stressors and daily inflammation that you see people that are having cortisol issues, that are having hyper and hypothyroidism induced issues because of their stress being out of whack. There's people that are on thyroid medications because that's what it looks like to a doctor, and they want to put you on medication, but you can fix that by addressing your actual workouts, your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery, things that are not sexy. They take discipline and commitment, and they take longer than medication, but they ultimately help fix the root issue.
Sure. And some of the, you know, just to make sure we go over this too, like I kind of said earlier, controlled aspects of stress, it's almost like controlled doses of stress are good for you. So look at one extreme: no exercise, no stress on muscle, no signal sent to the body to either retain or gain muscle, excessive, unending stress on muscle, and no equal or kind of reciprocal aspects of recovery means severe atrophy on the other end of the extreme. So you look at hard forced, you know, labor, like at concentration camp victims, work, stressor, no nutrition, no rest, right? So there's one extreme, you know, I should say an extreme on both ends of that spectrum. And one of them is a great example of not having adequate necessary stress and not having far too much stress with no end, right? And so whether it's that, or, you know, I noticed you also wanted to talk about digestive stress. You know, we don't eat healthy whole foods like we should be eating, and giving that work to our digestive system is good for us. You know, protein, it's the higher thermic value food, takes more energy for our body in a good way to break it down, takes more caloric effort from our body to break it down. And we have a bunch of food today that is, you know, super calorie dense, nutrient deficit, and, you know, very convenient. And so again, without going too deep into the whole discussion of hormones that we talked about before, add those variables in there with the other variables of heightened cortisol levels, regular insulin at, you know, beyond healthy levels of regular insulin activity, and storing all those calories, right? And then how much of our stress factors have to do with our own management of those stresses in terms of internalizing them or our own aspects of them. So guess what? You're stressed out, so you go eat something, you eat some garbage food, right? And then next thing you know, your blood sugar drops. So you're eating some other garbage food a little bit later, and you're just kind of coming home to deal with your kids and try to relax at the end of the day. And next thing you know, you're having a drink, and wash, rinse, and repeat. Enough days, weeks, or months go into that. And then you look at yourself and like, dang it, I hate myself. Look at me. I'm such a disgusting pig. And then here comes a bigger wash of that stress cycle all over again, you know? And so it really is a vicious cycle that starts typically with, like you said, how do we manage our stress? When I'm stressed out, if my solution to managing my stress is always some type of convenient and debatable coping mechanism, like another piece of cake or another drink, you know, another vodka tonic or whatever your drink is, especially in regularity, you can absolutely guarantee that you're going to be repaid in the same aspect that you have sown into that. And then you will wake up one day, your lipids will be worse, your blood panels will be worse, your doctor's going to ask you what you're doing or not doing. You're not going to like the way you look, so now you're more stressed, you know, and it really just kind of perpetuates itself.
Well, and even just the stress of having to go to the doctor because something feels wrong. Like, you just added another stress. Like, nobody's really comfortable going to the doctor. It's just like when they're like, "Oh, let's measure blood pressure." It's like, well, that's a great idea because it's already through the roof.
High now, just thinking about it. Yeah.
But Yeah, and Ben touched on a good point, because another thing that we got out of the study was that stressful events could motivate unhealthy food choices. Duh. Like Ben just
Sure.
talked about that. And so many times when we're stressed, what do we reach for first? Is it the chicken breasts? Is it the chicken rice and broccoli?
No.
Of course not. It's the chips, it's the donuts, it's the ice cream, it's the tubs of ice cream, the cartons of ice cream,
Yeah.
it's the fast food, it's the pizza, it's the things where it's like, I'm so stressed. I don't want to do more stress. It's trading stress for stress. It's like the stress of having to cook a meal, you're making that mentally stressful, but it's actually good for your body. But
Yeah.
you want the delivery because it's easier and it's convenient, but that's putting worse stress on your body. And ultimately, these unhealthy food choices obviously lead to morbid obesity, where we can now see 2/3 of the country is some form of overweight obese or morbidly obese, which 20 years ago it was maybe a third. So again, like correlation, maybe not causation, but for sure correlation.
Sure.
But type 2 diabetes is up, metabolic syndrome's up, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is up, which a lot of you haven't heard of, but that's extremely dangerous. Having a fatty liver can take you out overnight if it hasn't been monitored at all or properly. Excuse me. And obviously, the other things that we want to bring up is, according to this review as well, like all these stress related diseases, again, I just want to cover this again, like cardiovascular disease is one of the diseases that hits, they say it's the number one leading cause in the world of death annually, some form of cardiovascular disease, which is heart disease. But also cancer is hugely related to stress and inflammation. And that's been massive studies over the last decade where people have been managing or studying stress for a while, but now they're starting to get into inflammation. Obviously, one of the biggest proponents of anti-inflammation is Tom Brady and his TB12 method. It's supposed to be the most anti-inflammation diet out there. No tomatoes, no other things. Like, again, he also doesn't eat red meat and eggs and other things that I completely believe every person should be eating, as long as they're, grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised, like properly taken care of animals. But the problem that we've been seeing with inflammation and stress as well, I clicked the wrong one, is that where did it go? Chronic stress is also correlated with tumor growth, which was scary to read. It makes sense, again, because unnecessary chronic stress, again, and just to make a quick deviation, the good stress that Ben and I are mentioning is acute stress. It's a stress response to an activity. It's like an acute stress to working out. It's an acute stress to digesting a high quality protein, which creates a higher calorie burn or thermic effect in the body. Those are acute stresses because they're managed and they're acute. They're small and they go away. We're talking chronic stress, when you're in a chronic state of being stressed out, where you're either like so addicted to cortisol that you can't even tell the difference of the energy, and you're burning out your adrenals and pituitary gland and everything else in that HPA axis, or you've gotten to the point where you've completely ran it into the ground and you have adrenal fatigue and those other very serious things. But that chronic stress creates tumor growth. And from that tumor growth, there's a progression of more tumors growing, which is when the cancer starts to metastasize through the body. And those are the main causes of death in liver, colon, and prostate cancer. And I'm not saying any of this to scare you guys, but you have to be honest. Sometimes the truth is a little scary to hear.
Now everybody's really stressed out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. It's that bad, right?
So take a second to manage your stress while you hear this, but just understand, again, like, I'm not saying if you are battling cancer right now, like Ben and I are praying for you, and we're not telling you should have managed your stress better. Like, that's not helpful. Hopefully you have the right doctors and everything in place, but we're talking, like, just so you guys know, these things get worse under the mismanagement in chronic abuse of stress in your body,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we're not going to go much further into those details in this episode. Again, we wanted to keep it a little more shorter and digestible for you guys today, but ultimately you're probably asking like, well, then what can I do about this? And first of all, we're not doctors, we're not scientists, we're not biologists. We're we are just two devoted coaches that love what we do. We've worked with a ton of people. We've gotten tons of certifications. We've done thousands of hours of studies over the course of our lives combined. And we look into this information because we think it's really prevalent for you guys to know that ultimately we are going to keep hitting the same nail with the same hammer over and over and over again, which is we don't want you to get to this point. We don't want you to think it's normal to live a stressed out life. It's normal to avoid doing exercise, to avoid eating well, to avoid healthy sleep patterns and restorative movements and stretches and things that can actually give you such a high quality life. You right now might be addicted to chronic stress. You may be addicted to cortisol and not realizing the path that you're heading down. And part of our job as coaches, but also just people that want to get good information out into the space, is to stop you before you get to a point where there's no return, where these greater things are happening. And part of that is you need to have protocols to manage stress and to minimize inflammation in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes in many forms. And again, we're going to give you the Google Doc, but I mean, first thing, you got to work out. You got to work out. And I will also tell you, it's better for you to do a little bit every day than do a lot 1 or 2 days a week and do nothing on the other days. I'd rather see you, if I said walk 3.5 miles a week, should you walk 3.5 miles one day and do nothing the other 6, or should you walk half a mile a day for 7 days? Like it's going to be better to reset where you're at and get your body accustomed to things, unless you're talking like David Goggins level, like we're all mental fortitude and building a different paradigm inside of someone. But for the average person listening, I would be more impressed to see you commit to walking half a mile a day, 7 days a week, than 3.5 miles a day, one time a week. Same with working out. Ben and I can work out for an hour to an hour and a half, depending on what our workout protocols are, what the strength training protocols are, what the recovery is. We can build each other programs, build ourselves programs. We understand how to implement recovery into that and everything else. But I would never tell you, if you are deconditioned or not used to being in the weight room, it's time to go smash a 90-minute weight room workout. Mm-hmm. I would much rather you split that 90-minute workout into 6 15-minute workouts.
Yeah.
I'd rather.
And the other thing too is that reinforces the, our patterns in our mind and our habitual and even subconscious aspects of what we do are like the grooves in our record when it comes to our neural development. But we do grow new neurons even as adults every day. So that's another reason, not just so that it's more manageable and digestible to do those things every day in smaller amounts, but the more that you do that, the more you're going to establish this new normal, and you're going to develop new grooves in this record that become essentially who you are. Without getting too deep into that, the whole aspect of identity and activity are a lot more correlated than you think. So you might say, well, I'm not a person who's really in shape. If you start doing a little bit every day, you will start to see yourself as a person who is a person in shape or on the way there, because those things are so inextricably interrelated to each other, activity, identity. And that's another reason why that you need to do those things a little bit more consistently than try to do something extreme one day.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's 2 points to add on to what Ben just said. One, if you try to attack it all in one day, you're going to hurt yourself, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of it. Like If you go into a 90-minute workout bout, you're not walking the next day. You might not walk the next few days.
It's true.
But also you're gonna get really psychologically down on yourself. You're gonna get emotionally stressed out. But the other thing is, in our coaching, it's not just about telling you these tangible things to do every day. It's to recognize the patterns that were opposing to it before. So when Ben says, do these little things every day, when I say, instead of one 90-minute workout, give me 6 days of 15 minutes, it's not just greasing those patterns and positivity and making like new habits, but you need to identify and understand that may sound overwhelming to you, but you did that in a negative way to get to the point where you are today.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
slowly but surely said, I'm just going to skip the workout today because it's a little too hectic and busy, but I'll make up for it tomorrow. And then tomorrow came, but because you didn't work out yesterday, you got a shitty night of sleep, you still had to get up early, you still had to work, take care of the kids, whatever your circumstance is, you already hurt yourself one day that bled over into the next day. And that next day, from a lack of sleep and nutrition, you're either going to make poor food choices because they're easier, or you're still going to be zapped for your workout. And realistically, missing one workout and trying to make up for it in the next workout is one of the worst strategies you can have, because again, it leads to injury, potential overtraining, depending on your conditioning. And it's just not a good habit to get into, because then you get in a habit of, I didn't show up today, so I'll show up double tomorrow. Think of how horrible that would be if you placed it anywhere outside of working out. Well, I didn't eat today, so I'll just eat twice as much tomorrow. I didn't.
Hey, some people are doing that actually.
No, and it's true. A lot of people in the fasting community, it's like, well, sick, I'll eat like an asshole for 4 or 5 days, but then I'll fast for the next 48 to 72 hours, and I'll make up I hate when people have those protocols, because and there's people that have made a lot of money doing that, and people that I've worked with in certain masterminds and communities that do that. And I'm not trying to talk down. That's why I'm not going to name names or their programs or anything, because it's not my place. But like, when you teach people to not eat for 3 days and then eat whatever they want for 4 days, there's still a lack of habits there. There's still a lack of nutrition and wellness and overall like good for that person, longevity speaking.
Right. Yep. It's establishing a bad relationship with food. No different than a relationship with the person. Like, I'm going to let this person treat me terrible for 3 or 4 days, but they're going to make up for it. They're going to make up for it.
Hey, wife, husband, I know I didn't come home today, but I'll come home twice as hard tomorrow.
Don't worry. I'm going to make it right for you.
Right. So again, like, we like to make light of some of these things, even though some of them are serious. You always got to have like easy examples, and you got to be able to laugh and smile about things. But ultimately, the one thing that Ben said as well, which I'll add to, every day, even as we get older, apparently there's still like 10,000 neurons renewed or created every day. And again, those are neurons that have no programming. They are brand new. So every day, when they say every day is a new day, a new choice, that's actually true. So think about it. When I've been making bad choices every day for years, it's really, really easy to program those new neurons to partner with the bad. And it's really difficult to break that chain and start something new. It's always going to be hard when you start. You have to accept that truth. Anyone marketing that it's easy and in 21 days, 30 days, 6 weeks, even 90 days, you're just going to turn your life around, run from that coach, run from that program, run from whatever it is. 90 days is at least a little more respectable when it comes to like building a habit and creating a routine. But it's still the idea that if you have done years of damage to yourself with daily choices, that does not come undone in a short amount of time. So, but it does not mean that you're not responsible to make one good decision today. So when you're listening to this, it's just the idea of like, Alex Ramosi says, like, I think in 10 years, but I still break it down to the 2 or 3 things I need to do today. So like, if you everybody has a goal of getting in shape. He even continues on saying, like, your goals don't impress me, your actions do. Because everybody has a goal of getting a six-pack, of getting in shape, of having their summer body, New Year's resolution, skinny for the wedding, skinny for whatever. And most of the time it doesn't happen, or it happens very momentarily and then you default back because there wasn't a daily action that created a discipline and a rhythm for you to live your life by. So every day, knowing that you have these 10,000 new neurons ready to be programmed, start with your affirmations in the morning. Start with moving your body in the morning. Start with feeding yourself good food. I promise you, I hated eating in the morning my whole life. Like, it was hard for me. I still don't enjoy eating a lot before a workout, but I've told myself, I have noticed that when I eat like eggs and fruit, something as simple as that, or eggs, fruit, and a slice of like homemade sourdough bread or something, just getting some good food in my body, like an hour and a half before a workout, my workouts are stronger and better. And those things sit lighter in me than a heavy meal, but they can still be decently caloric. But it sets a tone for my whole metabolism the rest of the day, my whole feeding process. And ultimately, like, I feel better. My insulin and blood sugar are balanced. My cortisol's not beaming out the roof. I have natural energy, so I don't have to keep drinking more energy drinks like I do, or coffee like you may do. Like, you have this natural energy from food and your body functioning properly, that all of a sudden here we are. And like, that one decision to eat in the morning, I don't force myself to eat a lot of food. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying I understand the health benefits of eating a good meal within the first, most people say 30 minutes to an hour. Within the first 2 hours, just get something in your body. Have a couple eggs, have some fruit, even if you got to start by just drinking a protein shake. And some of that starts the night before too. Some of those habits are stop eating 2 hours before bed, so you can actually digest through your food and you actually wake up hungry in the morning. Most of you don't wake up hungry because you're on way too many stimulants, way too much cortisol firing, but also you still have food in your system. Your body's like, don't give me any more shit. Like, I don't want any. When you get back to a regular, normal function, you're a lot better. And that just ties into working out and eating well. It's like, stop going for the home run, get the single, like, just get on base. Take it one base at a time, one step at a time, one shot at a time. The team that's down 30 at half isn't coming back in the next 2 shots. But if they diligently play defense, get a few stops, get a few buckets, get some momentum, all of a sudden the 30-point lead is cut to 20. It's cut to 10. It's cut to 3. Tied up. They took the lead. They won. Of course, I'm talking about the Golden State Warriors because that's what they do all the time. But
you're going there.
But it's just the thing. Like, if it's taking, we've said this in so many episodes, so we're gonna move forward. But take 2 or 3 actions a day that make your life better. Start every day with a good decision. Say, I'm gonna drink some water in the morning. I'm gonna pray. I'm going to eat some food. I'm going to get my body active. Just do something positive that goes towards that vision of the new you, of the prosperous you, of the healthy you, of the you that you've always wanted to be, but haven't become just yet because you're stuck in old ways. You got to make that first step, and it's got to be small enough that it's easy to replicate every day, but impactful enough that if you do it for 90, 180, 365 straight days, you'll be a completely unrecognizable person.
Yeah. The other thing too is I think the emphasis on winding down our routines toward the end of the day, and probably even more of a deficit, I think, or an area that as a culture, as this day and age we live in, we're worse at. So we have lots of placating, entertainment savvy things that we do, but we never truly unwind from a cerebral context in this aspect of whether it's deep breathing techniques, whether it's reading a little bit instead of watching TV until you fall asleep and having this blue light in front of your eyes, until you pass out. There are, I know some people would say that this is Eastern medicine or this is witchcraft, but there is actually quite, a bit of evidence behind even the smells that we have in our house having an effect on our state of relaxation. So things like lavender or rosemary that have been associated with a deeper state of relaxation. There are things you can do to prep your house, prep your room before you go to bed to help you kind of de-escalate from the day. Because everything you talked about is the fact that we are really good at getting our stress levels through the roof, whether it's all the expectation and things that we have that we're spread so far all over the place with all of the media, social media, work, people. 100 different people feel like they can just contact us on our phone at any given moment. And we have this sense of expectation to respond to all those people all the time. So it's go, 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 spread yourself thinner, more and more. Things like that. There are other practical solutions, like, for example, take an Epsom salt magnesium bath every once in a while. A lot of people are more commonly or more often short on magnesium, and there is quite a bit of research and data behind magnesium levels being associated with stress levels. So if you're low, those conditions can push you towards light sensitive headaches, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, all kinds of other things like that. And even your muscles themselves contracting and relaxing rely on those magnesium levels. And taking a bath with I think it's magnesium chloride is actually, your skin is an incredible agent for absorbing that, and you don't have to worry about taking in too much, because unless you have some kind of kidney disease or something, your body will rid itself of excess levels if you take in more than you need. But these are all things you can do to help kind of keep stress in its place, and kind of mitigate it or minimize it when you really don't want it in your mind or in your, hate to use the term aura because it sounds real weird too, but you want to do what you can to control the atmosphere. And sometimes we forget that we do have control over our atmosphere and the atmosphere that we set in our homes, that we are the purveyor of our microcosm of culture. And sometimes we forget that.
Well, and I'll put up some protocols for y'all on the screens that kind of overview what we've talked about. But again, this list, so like I put some of the ones that are probably the most prevalent, popular, easy to know, like workout. You need to have some sort of strength training protocol. And typically like 3 times a week is fine for most of you. If you do like anywhere from 3 to 5 compound, or I guess it would depend on the workout, but there's basically like 6 compound movements that you can do overall. If you do some combination of those 3 times a week to work on your overall strength, you're going to get more muscle. You're going to burn more calories. You're going to have stronger bones. You're going to have a better metabolic response. You're going to have better adaptations in your body. You're actually going to sleep better. You're going to perform better. You're going to be more functional in your daily life. You need to walk daily. I would honestly, if you could, if I know it's not possible for everyone, but if you're on the coast, go walk at the beach or something, like get grounded. Grounding is one of the most underrated things that is starting to get talked about again, but like putting your bare feet in the sand, in the ocean, in soil is actually one of the fastest ways that your neurons let go of stress and get recharged from the earth itself. And again, that might sound hippie-ish to you, but it's so true. And again, eat whole foods. Everyone has a budget, but I guarantee you could look at your budget and make some sacrifices. Because honestly, I used to think like first step for most of you is just eat well. If you've been eating shitty, if you've been eating out fast food all the time, just make good food choices. Once you get used to making good food choices, now start looking at where you can go higher quality. Like, I don't do anything other than grass-fed or grass-finished beef or pasture-raised eggs or chicken or wild-caught fish, because I believe in that. I believe in the studies that are behind those sources of food versus GMO, modified, corn fed, soy fed, like all these things that they're doing to get more out of an animal when there's already plenty. I go for that quality. I go organic in most cases if it makes sense, if it's available. Especially with like fruits and vegetables, things that get sprayed with pesticides, like organic's usually better. There still should be a cleaning protocol when you get fresh fruit. Things that are frozen fruit's actually one of the best hacks for a budget, because you can usually get more for less money, and it's actually more bioavailable because it's frozen at the source instead of traveling fresh for a few days to get to the store. I saw a couple studies on that as well. But again, not going to get crazy nuanced or detailed. Commit to a sleep pattern. That means waking up and going to bed at the same time every day. That's still one that I struggle with. I'll be transparent. I'm usually good during the week. It's a little harder to convince myself to get up early on the weekends. And by early, I mean like instead of 5, like getting up at like 8 or whatever. But like that can be a huge difference if there isn't a certain level of activity, or if you sleep in, you're less active and you're more gluttonous on the weekends, you're throwing everything off. So those are things to really think about. You need to be hydrated well, but if you're not eating enough food, drinking too much water can actually flush you of micronutrients. So you got to make sure you're eating enough food while you're hydrating. Things that are less popular: cold showers, cold plunges, jumping in the ocean, amazing neurological responses, physiological responses, like so good for you, very difficult. I get it. I think it's way easier to jump in a cold bath or the ocean or a pool than it is to have a shower, because it's like 100 streams of cold water hitting you. But maybe I'm just a wuss, but I'd rather jump in like a body of water instead of missiles of water coming at me. Infrared light, we've talked about it on past shows. Huge biohack. Like by your bedside, get a lamp, switch out your normal light for an infrared light. It helps mitochondria like overproduce. They get way stronger. Those are the powerhouses of your cells. It does cellular rejuvenation. It's amazing. And you only have to do, start at 5 minutes, do 10, 15 minutes. It's not even a thing that you like, oh, eventually I'll just live in red light. It's like, no, you don't need that. But like, it's amazing what 10 or 15 minutes of red light can do for your mitochondrial health, cellular reproduction, and everything else. Breath work. This is extremely important if you work out at night. You got to have a way to come out of your sympathetic nervous system, and breath work is one of the fastest ways to do that. So when you're done smashing the weights, lay down on your back, elevate your legs, get them on top of something like a step or a box, get the feet elevated above your heart, and just breathe for 2 minutes, 90 seconds. Just intentionally working on your breath work will take you out of the fight, flight, sympathetic system into your rest, relax, parasympathetic system. That's crucial if you work out in the late afternoon or evening, because when you're working out, you're also spiking cortisol. So you need a way to drop cortisol and get insulin and melatonin production back up in the evening. So that's incredibly important. But also, breath work is just important throughout the day. It's how we manage stress. If I'm looking and getting pulled in 50 different directions and I can't control any of them, but I'm letting it take control of me.
Sure.
Just breathe. No, I guarantee 99.99999% of things that happen in life do not need a reaction. You can wait 10 seconds to respond. Gather yourself, breathe, calm yourself down, and then you are choosing to respond accordingly instead of reacting irrationally. Ben brought up the salt baths, magnesium baths. Those are great things. I never do them, but it would be great. I also don't fit in most bathtubs, so that's another problem. But also supplements. And again, I think too many people abuse supplements. They are supplements. They are not substitutes. So before you ever go down the supplement route, address your workouts, address your diet and nutrition, address your sleep, address all those bigger things. And then whatever is still a little insufficient, supplement, but don't start having 5 protein shakes a day because you don't feel like cooking steak or eggs or chicken or fish. Don't start supplementing glycerol because you don't want to eat actual carbs. Don't like there's powders and supplements for everything, and you could end up not even eating whole foods. And a huge piece of digestion, micronutrient uptake, and overall health has to do with breaking down food.
Yeah.
So when you take those processes out through supplements, you can actually be doing harm to your body if it's not properly balanced. I just said a lot. So
it's all good.
Ben, are there any other things that you feel, even though I didn't write them down, obviously, like anything else we could give the people or little synopsis to close out today's episode?
No, I mean, I think it's good. I think that everything we covered was valuable enough to take away with some kind of directive. And what it all comes down to is trying to be objective and honest enough with ourselves to identify what is that first domino that gets tipped over in how we manage our stress.
Great point.
Because it's almost always followed by a bunch of other ones that we end up paying for later. And that's the other thing that kept coming to my mind throughout all of this. Everything that you do, how you manage your stress, where you go to manage your stress is going to be paid for on the front end or the back end.
Yeah,
always will be. You're going to pay for it at some point in time. And you can look at it, if you manage it and deal with it the way that most Americans do, and a lot of people unfortunately do, it's like an arm mortgage. You think that the way you're dealing with things and coping with things is just helping you get by. And it may feel like you're getting by for a little while, but everything's going to accrue eventually. And you're going to get hit with the consequence of delaying and prolonging the inevitable. Yeah. And so that would be my first thing, is be honest with yourself about what it is that is that first domino you tip over, because it always follows through to many other things. And that is probably like the best nugget to take away from this. Employ the practicals that we gave you, but start looking at your day to day, your moment by moment. When the kids stress you out and you can't deal with it anymore, and you go to grab that Pinot Noir. And again, we're not knocking. This is by no means a hyper religious podcast or some judgmental soapbox we're on. There's nothing wrong with having an occasional glass of wine at all, but it has a place. And if you've given it other positions and places in your life, and it's misappropriated, you're going to end up paying for that.
Absolutely. And I always do a terrible job at this. So make sure to like the video if you found value out of all this. Subscribe to our channel and turn the post notification bells to all. We put out one full-length episode a week, and we're starting to chop up and do smaller like digestible clips of the episodes throughout the week. Some of you have asked, hey, we love your full-length episodes. Sometimes I just need to catch a glimpse here or there. Some of you also probably just want to watch something a little bit shorter and have a takeaway from it, and then you'll make time for the longer one. So we're hearing you, we're adjusting. So there's always going to be a weekly full episode, but we're going to start producing smaller clips from the episodes for all of you to make it more digestible. So comment below, what did you think of this episode? What did you find stressful? What did you think was helpful? What did you think was enlightening? We just want to hear back from you. Again, we always want to know that what we're talking about is what you want to hear about. And we got another killer episode coming up next week. That's going to be quite the topic. And I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not even going to give you a taste of what it is. But just make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment. Share this with anybody that you think. We appreciate all the support you guys have been showing us so far. And again, I'm Brian. This is the wonderful Ben. We are 4FTV, where we cover everything from faith, family, fitness, and freedom. And we hope that you take these two silent killers and just completely eradicate them to the best of your ability going forward by focusing on that one thing and taking a step in the right direction today.